Thank you. Y'all almost let me not record these. All right. So, as I was saying, when you move into God's presence, then everyone that is around you is going to be a reflection of you, right? So what happens is as you start to learn to get into God's presence, the people who are around you that are not conducive to the frequency of God's presence that you're putting out, they'll just drop off. We talked about that in the romantic relationships live. After those people drop off, then the people who stay around, those people are like now your reflection. So this is how we live in God consciousness. And so the purpose of the energetic asking is just like you can ask those people who they are because they're a reflection of you and everything is you. You can also do this as you move through life every single day. And if you're familiar with the law of attraction, you could do this in segment intention, right? And if you're not, we'll go deeper on that. All right. So in order to be in constant dialogue with God, you have to first get into God's presence. So the first component of this is accepting, right? As you accepting God into your being. So we've already talked about this when we talk about the 4 steps to prayer. So if you haven't looked at the 4 steps to prayer, mini course or live, that is inside of the um classroom tab. All right. So it's acceptance. All right. So the first thing is like once you accept God, now you're creating this space to be in relationship. Another thing we've talked about. You can't really talk to nobody that you're not in relationship with, right? And also you don't feel safe with a person that you're not in relationship, right? So picture God being a relationship that you have in your life. You're not going to have the safety to surrender and move into the next step if you're not first coming into accepting God inside of you and creating this relationship so that you can have this dialogue with God in order to be able to understand how God speaks to you. You know what I'm saying? So this is how you stay in constant dialogue with God. First of all, understanding the language that y'all have together. And I always compare this relationship that you have with God to that of a relationship of a divine significant other because you get to a point with someone that you're deeply in love with where you can kind of already understand what they're about to say, what they think, and that type of stuff. You really should be in that place with God. And when you and God become one after you accept God, which is the first step, and you allow God to live within you, which cultivates this presence of God within your life, then it's like you start to understand the frequency of how God works in your life, how God is going to express in your life, and then you can easily move into understanding. So the first accept is all about relationship. How do you cultivate this relationship with God so that you understand when He's speaking? Because make no mistake, God is always speaking. It's just a lot of times we don't have the volume up. All right. So the next step is surrender and embody, right? So we've already talked a lot about when you accept God, right? And then moving into surrenderance, that's when you're going to go ahead and surrender into the power. So again, we talked about this in the 4 steps of prayer. As you're surrendering, you're letting go of your own body, right? And then you're going to embody God. So in order for you to do that, you have to let go of what you're remember our body is holding all of these things. So say you're in a moment where you have to make a quick decision, right? A lot of times you got your mind, if it's not surrendered to God, it's trying to tell you all these different things. Then your body might be being triggered, all these different things. But when you learn how to surrender and embody God in a moment, you could quickly hear what God is saying and not what all the noise around you is saying. All right. So that's another thing. A lot of people don't really know how to do this. And because they don't know how to do this, they end up in places that they shouldn't be in at the time or in a moment of time or in a relationship or so on and so forth, or they keep repeating patterns because they have not yet perfected how to move quickly into the presence of God. All right. And then the last thing is obedience. So you got acceptance, you got surrender and embody, and then you got obedience. This is the key thing. Some people know how to quickly get in the presence of God. Some people know how to quickly accept God, but they don't know how to obey. And so what happens is when you are able to surrender to God and then quickly understand what God is saying and speak it, if you get instruction, what keeps that conversation going is your obedience. All right. So a lot of times what happens is God didn't already told you something and then you do something the opposite. And that's an energetic no towards the presence of God. So now you're aligning yourself to something other than the presence of God that you have asked to be in your life, right? So I feel like when we talk about the omnipresence of God, it's not necessarily forceful, right? And God is a God of definitely of free will. And so if you give God an energetic no, as
Hi.
long
Good. How are you?
uh-oh, somebody not muted. Okay. If you give God an energetic no, then you're going to quickly move out of alignment, and it's going to sound like the voice of God is turned down, but it's not. It's just you haven't turned it up internally. All right. So let me give you some examples of this. All right. When you practice the 4 steps of prayer, right? You invite God inside. You ask for these questions. For example, say you go into studying. You could literally, like for example, this morning I was studying and I had a question. Actually, my daughter had a question. And when my daughter asked me the question, my actual body realized I don't really know how to answer this question. And the question that I wanted to give her the answer that I wanted to give her was the answer that I had kind of died to, if that makes sense. And so I was thinking to myself, this answer doesn't really feel in alignment, right? So in the moment that my daughter was asking me the question, instead of succumbing to my human self being really uncomfortable with the fact that I didn't know the answer to her question, I just went ahead and surrendered my human self, and I internally asked the question to God that my daughter was asking me. When I tell you that question got answered so quickly, and the instruction that God gave me was, now share this with your daughter in this way. And that obedience is what's going to give me my next instruction when it comes to the next thing that either she asked me or that I asked in the same realm of knowledge. Do you understand? Does this make sense to you? It's not a hard concept, which is why I picked it for today, because we won't have to spend too much time going over it. But does this make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So when you start to think about the energetic dialogue, right, you have to go deeper into energetic yeses and nos. And so this is how we agree to things. Like when people say you had a soul contract, this is how we agree to things in a moment without physically being like yes or no in an outward behavior. What happens is time is always moving in a moment, right? Every single moment that's happening, it's like this one long line of time, right? But the moments that are happening, remember we talked about living in the present moment, they're all an opportunity to give an energetic yes or an energetic no, right? So when each moment happens, if you come up into a moment that doesn't feel natural, like, we have moments, let me explain this better. We have moments that we've already conquered, right? These are areas we've already surrendered to God in our life. So when those moments come, it's easy to just give an energetic yes, energetic yes. But sometimes those moments come and we like, the yes is not that easy, right? So instead of you trying to sift through all the things, that's the moment to surrender, right? And if you surrender in that moment and you give an energetic yes, then now you've like moved more into your alignment. If you surrender in that moment and you give an energetic no to the presence of God, now you've created, I won't say that you're in out of alignment. I would say that you've created a new course or a new journey back to the alignment. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Because this is how people end up on what I call detours. So, like for example, in relationships, if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody, right? And you might get to you might get start getting to know them, right? And it's like ain't nothing really wrong with them, or maybe they might have red flags, but that moment where you like, I feel in my entire being that this is not right, but you just keep going. That's an energetic no to something opposite of the God of God's presence, or in sometimes your ancestors' presence who is trying to warn you, right? So when you give that energetic no, and you'll go ahead and say, I'm not gonna follow the path that I know is in alignment. And on the other hand, you've given an energetic yes to whatever is not in your frequency, right? And so when you do that, you've aligned to the frequency of that person. That's how people end up in these whole toxic cycles with people, because you have to keep giving an energetic yes in order to stay in it. And then it just becomes this revolving door. And now you got each moment that you just keep giving the energetic yes to their frequency and not the frequency of God, until the moment comes that you do something opposite and now you're back on the other side. Does that make sense? I hope this makes sense to y'all. But you got to think about these energetic moments as they're happening each moment, right? And if you're living in the present, then you will know each moment I'm saying yes, each moment I'm saying yes to this, no to this, yes to this, no to this, yes to this, no to this. It's creating alignment, right? And in order to do that, you have to be in constant dialogue with God, because you need to know what to say yes and no to. Because remember, our experiences in this human body is making us think we want things that we don't want, or we don't want things that we need. You know what I'm saying? And so, in order to make sure that you make decisions with the mind of God, you have to surrender to God. Does that make sense? And any questions about that? Y'all could just talk. Y'all don't have to be on the it's only five of us in here. So if you have a
That
question,
makes
you can
sense to
say
me.
that makes sense to you. Does that make sense to everyone else?
Yes, ma'am. That makes sense to me.
Any questions? No. No questions. Okay, so let me tell you how this is relevant to a lot of things that we've learned. So when we talk about like, if you've been here for a while, then we talked about the frequency of fear and we talked about the frequency of love. So this is like an intertwining that happens, right? You have to keep on saying, oh wait, she has a question. Is an energetic yes a mental note of acknowledgement? Can you expound on your question, Anil? A mental note of acknowledgement. What do you mean by that?
I mean, like just mentally agreeing that you are in alignment with this aspect, or like mentally saying no. Does that make better sense?
It does make better sense. It's
Okay.
more of an energetic alignment because remember, like we're energy, so everything that we're cultivating in our decisions is like an energy agreement, right? So you might say it in your mind, yes, but actually what's happening is your spiritual being is agreeing to the frequency, right? So if you give an energetic yes, you're basically saying my energy is aligning to this, whether it's in alignment for you or not. If you give an energetic no, you're saying my energy is not aligning to this. You see what I'm saying? It's like when you hear the spiritualists talk about like aligning to a timeline because there's all these different timelines available to us, nothing can really take you out of alignment. That's my belief, right? Some people believe different, but I do think that things can take you into like down a different path that's going to take you longer to get to where you want to go. You see what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily a mental acknowledgement. It may feel that way in the physical body, but it is literally like all of your energetic being and all of your spiritual being saying yes to something, which means that I'm aligning my energy to this. And when you align your energy to it, you give it power. You give that story power. You give that timeline power. You see what I'm saying? So for example, an example of relationships, right? If you're in a toxic relationship and it's like your spiritual being is telling you, this is not what is in alignment for me. But if you keep on giving it an energetic yes by agreeing it, like you're staying in that space physically, you're not asking God what you should do, or you're hearing from God and you're not aligning yourself to God's instruction through obedience, right? You're giving that timeline, you're giving that frequency, you're giving that partnership the energy that it needs to keep harvesting from you. You see what I'm saying? Because it needs your energy to be present in your lives. So if you keep saying yes to it, you're saying no to what is on the other side that might be better for you. Does that make sense? And does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That answered your question?
Yes, that answered my question.
Okay, so it does. I like the way you asked it because in our physical body, you are going to say, you want to hear yourself say yes or no to a thing. You are going to hear that, right? But when yourself is saying yes or no, literally your energy is saying yes or no too, and it's rising to whatever you're saying, right? Because this is sort of psychology in a way, but it's true. When your brain does something, every other piece of your being has to come into alignment with it, right? Which is why people try to tell you to change your thoughts in order to manifest what you want. But the thing is, what we're doing is we're really using a cheat code, because if you surrender to God, then God will take over your thoughts and you will only be able to say yes to what God is in alignment with, right? The problem is when you try to hold both frequencies in a moment, which is why you have to quickly learn how, you have to quickly perfect surrender and body. Surrender to God and body God, make the decision, right? That's the difference. Your mind is going to say it, but your body and your being and your energy is going to flow to it and give it the life. Somebody say something in the chat. The reason why growth hurts, we have to continuously agree with what's uncomfortable. 100%, Morgan. That is 100% true. Because it's going to feel uncomfortable to the body, but the energy and the spirit that's surrendered to God is going to feel liberated and elevated, right? but you have to be able to realize that your body is not necessarily where you want it to be yet, right? Because when you first let something go, especially when you're new to this like process, when you first let something go, it's like our body is living in our human experience, right? So it starts to process everything. And sometimes I'm gonna tell people like the body be behind. It really be behind. Our energy and our spiritual being, a lot of times, I ain't gonna say a lot of times, all the time is already with God if we have it. But we still have to process through the body, right? Which is why it's important to know how to really quick surrender to God and align your energy so that the body is forced to follow. And that's what moves you into the actual physical timeline that you want to be in, right? So when people talk about manifesting and they talk about all this different stuff that a lot of people find to be so complicated, I always find it so crazy because this is literally how you manifest. All you have to do is keep on rising the expression and the presence of God in your life. And you do that by giving energetic yeses and nos. And you give energetic yeses and nos by being in constant dialogue with God and knowing what to say yes to and what to say no to. Because your human brain does not know what to say yes and no to. It's going through this whole logical process. But every decision of God is not logical, right? For example, quitting your job and becoming an entrepreneur, not knowing you're going to be a millionaire in 5 years, is not necessarily a logical decision if you could barely pay your bills. But if God tells you to do it and you in obedience to God, then your energy, your frequency, and your God conscious mind knows that it's the right thing to do. But your human body is shaking in its boots, right? That's what I mean. You have to know how to give each moment an energetic yes or no. And so when people talk about manifesting, I just be like, y'all are making it harder than what it has to be because you can process the human body and you can change the frequency of the human body by just moving into the presence of God. And you can also find healing there as well. And I'm not saying like we're going to spiritual bypass, but I am saying that like quite honestly, you are not going to get the revelation that you need in order to really move your body and align your body to your spirit's frequency without God and your ancestors. So when they be saying just change your mind, I'm like, that don't make no sense. Because you can change your mind in a moment, yes, but the moment your whatever you change your mind to is not going to be sustainable, it's not going to stick because you don't actually believe it. You're trying to trick your mind. If you move into the presence of God and you embody God, when you move into your God conscious mind, you do believe it because it's a real thing there. Right? And so that part of your mind can also heal your body. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, Morgan is right saying the reason why growth hurts. All right. So when we talk about like what we're gonna be doing on the 10-day surrender challenge, I'm sorry, do y'all have any questions before I keep going? Okay. So when we do the 10 days of surrender challenge, right? We have one goal, and that goal is to number one, just learn how to be in relationship with God as if God is the person that is actively in our life. And God is the person that's actively in your life. It's you. You just have to learn how to be in dialogue with inner self, which is the presence of God, right? After accepting God. And so when we start to think about like what that looks like in our life, it's going to look different for each person, right? And the reason why it's going to look different for each person is because God is expressing himself or God is expressing himself through each person in a different expression. Like, right? So when you see, like, for example, certain people align into a certain religion and everybody wants to be right, I always just find that so funny because my thought is this is just a different expression of God. And whatever expression of God you align to just says something about where you're at in your life path right now. It doesn't mean that you're wrong, I'm right, vice versa, right? Which is why I don't really like push religion onto people because at the end of the day, it's all about a different expression of God, right? You'll know when someone is aligned to God because they'll have the fruit of the Spirit. And so, what you need to see is where am I at with God and what expression of God am I currently in? And what that means is like, to what point can I get into the presence of God, right? Some people can go really, really deep in the presence of God right now because they've been doing it for years and years and years. It's very quick and it's second nature to them, right? And some people are just started, and that's fine because God is available to all of us. So when you start thinking about how can I move into the frequency of God, you want to start to start your days off with the 4 steps of prayer. If you start your days off with the 4 steps of prayer, you're immediately going to start to see God's going to start to show up every day. It's going to be thicker and thicker. The Holy Spirit will be thicker and thicker before you because It's like you showing up every day to be in relationship with God. So it's like when you courting somebody, right? I'm not trying to be funny, but it's the truth. When someone's courting you or you courting somebody, you spending time with them, you getting to know them, you kicking it with them, y'all spending every. It's the same thing with God. You got to show up and kick it with God, and that's going to do. It's going to look different for everybody, right? And so I gave y'all an invitation to only eat fruits and vegetables and consume large amounts of water. That's it. It's all an invitation. It's totally up to you. It's all an invitation, right? But the reason why I say this is because by taking away some of the things that feed our flesh, it makes our ears open more, right? And so you can hear God a little bit easier, right? It's only 10 days. I promise you won't die or starve, but again, it's an invitation. And when you remove certain things that are like vices to us, what starts to happen is the questions that we don't hear the internal questions that we don't hear because they're suppressed by all the numbing that we do with like food and vices and phones and whatever. They start to come into the top of the surface and you can hear and feel them very easily. And so what's going to happen with those is I want you to start writing them all in your journal, right? Make a list of all the internal questions that you have in your journal. Are y'all taking notes? I'm sorry, I didn't tell you to get your notebooks. Are y'all taking notes? Should I go back? Okay, I know you taking notes, B. Is anybody, am I moving too fast for anyone else? Okay. So when those questions start to come to the surface, what I want you to do is just start making a list of those questions, right? And then as you see fit, start working through those list of questions in your journal. And you can do stream of conscious journaling, which is basically you just writing your thoughts about how you feel about it. Or you can journal and try to answer the questions. But every time a new question pops up, add it to your list of prompts, right? And so what happens is, as you start to hear the questions, right, and then answer the questions, you're creating a dialogue. Okay, you're creating a dialogue, and so you can take some of these questions into your prayer or into your meditation. After the 4 steps of prayer, you can lean into meditation, and you can take some of these questions in and practice just hearing God. And when I say hearing God, I'm not saying you got to go into deep, deep meditation. What I'm saying is you need to get into meditation position, inhale, exhale, and just create a frequency with your breath. You don't have to do all these different breath work, specific types of breathing. Just in, out, and then release your mind. And when I say that, as you're going in and out with your breath, literally start to feel your mind soften. And as you start to feel your mind soften, make sure you start to align to God. We've already talked about this, to the presence of God, by inviting God to live in your mind, spirit, and your body, right? And start to practice and tune your voice to listening, right? And as you start to go throughout your day, you're not leaving the presence of God, you're taking the presence of God with you because you've accepted the presence of God to live in your life. Start to observe how your thoughts are changing each day and what you're hearing from God. Because remember, at this point, your thoughts are now God. And as you start to learn how God is speaking to you, what you're learning is what is the communication style that God is going to be communicating with you, right? Because I don't care what nobody say. People be like, God don't speak like that. God speak like this, and they try to make it seem like he just sound like some the words in the Bible. I'm gonna tell you something. God sounds like you most of the time. God sounds like your conscience. God sounds like a voice that you feel brings a deep knowing, right? So as you're doing that, we're not asking for nothing. All we're doing is asking for the presence of God to be in our lives. And the reason why we're doing this is because a lot of folks have a lot of people, a lot of things that they want to manifest. I want to manifest this thing. I want my business to do this. I want that to be this. But I'm going to tell you the most beautiful manifestation is when you align yourself to the presence of God and then you let the presence of God take over your life, and then everything that was of your wildest dreams that is in alignment for your life will start to be before you because you're aligning yourself to the reality of the presence of God in your life, which I can promise you in your little human brain and my little human brain, we can never think of the greatness of God. And so by surrendering to God, you're saying that I'm willing to let go of all the things my human brain thinks that I want in order to invite the presence of God in my life to bring about and manifest my wildest dreams. All right? Do we understand?
Yes. Can I add something?
Yes, of course. Because cousin. He's not a little cousin, but
I've
he's like a cousin.
recognized too, like it's through different ways, like like not only through self, but like symbols or
Mm-hmm.
signs, or like when we speak to other people or have conversation with other people, when the
Mm-hmm.
conversations that we have with other people start hitting a little too close to home, where it's like details that you only thought about, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that too, like God coming out of a conversation that we're having with one another. So that awareness and just like you talked about being present, that
Mm-hmm.
helps too, because you notice how he can talk to you in different ways in that very moment as well.
No, for sure. And when I say is you, I mean because at this point you're in the presence of God, so everything is you. Like to your point with when you talking to certain people, it's like they can only get close to you because they're within the frequency and the presence of God, and they can only be a mirror to you because they're aligned to that frequency. So it's really you showing yourself things because we're reflecting each other. But yes, like in human form, it could be somebody that you just met standing at the train. That happened to me all the time. So yes, 100%. And also like you said in symbols, it's even like you're showing yourself these things popping up because how did you even notice it? You know what I mean? So I 100% agree. I was reading the Bible yesterday and didn't even realize that my whole mama name was in the Bible as one of the rivers leading up to Eden. And then I have a daughter named Eden, but my mother died before that daughter was born, and I had a whole realization that I never had before, you know. So Morgan is
Wow,
absolutely right.
that's
Like,
powerful.
no, it really, I literally was sliding down the wall like a couple of hours earlier because I was just like, dang, I just miss my mama. Like, that happens sometimes with grief. Grief can be a complex and beautiful thing, and so I was like, once I got myself together, I was like, I'm finna do A, B, and C, and I'm gonna study a little bit. And when I seen that, it was like my mom was like, "Oh, baby, I'm still here." I was like, "Oh, Lord." So Morgan is 100% right. But like as you start to tune your ear, you're going to be able to hear God so much better. You know what I mean? Because the things that you wouldn't have thought was God because you wasn't attuned, you didn't have your ear attuned to it, you'll start to notice like God was speaking this whole time. It's just I didn't have the volume turned up. And it'll start to lead and guide your life in the most beautiful way. So any other thank you for that, Morgan. Thank you, cousin. All the black folks is
Yes.
cousins, in case y'all didn't know. Um, do y'all have any questions about the 10 days of surrender? Is anyone joining us? We starting tomorrow. I don't know if I said that. It's listed in the community. Y'all not joining? It's totally fine to do it anyways.
I
But y'all not
am. I'm gonna join.
you scared?
I'm participating.
Low key, low key.
Why? What are you scared of?
It's been a time, okay? It's been a time. So that's also how I know I probably should do it and just
Okay.
not overthink it. That's all.
Okay, well, I'm gonna be posting in the community, and I'll give y'all like some thought prompts for my prayer time too, and then just check in and open up for y'all to just say how y'all doing. All of y'all know how to contact me, so you can contact me. And like if you just need encouragement, don't be afraid to pop in the community and just be like, yeah, I'm sliding down the wall, and this is what I've realized. Um, whatever you need, I'm here and y'all know how to get in contact with me. I don't think you should do the food part either or not because I'm sure you're nursing. All right. That's all I got for y'all. And I really thank y'all for showing up. Can I tell y'all that I was really like, I don't know if I'm finna do this Zoom call tonight. And I hope this was helpful. I know it's a quick concept, and it's a concept that I needed to explain in order for you to understand the 10 days of surrendering. So I'll be posting resources. I'll even post meditation, some prayers throughout the time. But if you need more, please reach out to me and be prepared for me also to say, go back to God because as a healer, I am really practicing centering myself as a healer and extension of God and not God in people's lives. So if I hear God tell me to tell you to go back to God, I'm going to tell you that because that's part of my energetic yes as well, right? And my new alignment in my reality that I want God to bring me into. All right, y'all. Thank y'all for coming. Do y'all got any questions before we shut it down in here? Bree, you
No,
got any
ma'am.
questions for
Thank
the notes?
you.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you, Coco.
You're welcome. Any questions for the notes, Bree?
No questions.
Okay. Also, if you're looking for finances and you trying to get your finance together, cousin Morgan on here is the one. She eats. If you need her information, message me on Instagram and I'll send you her page. She
Oh
eats
my
that.
God. Stop. Stop. Stop.
Okay,
Thank
girl,
you.
because I looked at my 401k stuff, so they turned it up to max it out. I said, "Oh, baby, she was not a lie." So I was really satisfied. I said,
I
100%
appreciate
good.
that. Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a good night, and I love y'all. I will see y'all starting tomorrow. I'll post probably super early, so I'll probably be at the top of your inbox. Y'all have a good evening or
All
night.
right. Good
Thank you.
night,
Good night,
y'all.
everyone. Good night.